this meeting, September meeting of the Quorum Court to order, and welcome everyone in attendance. I would also like to welcome our newest member, Mr. Gary McHenry, who has been appointed by the governor to fill the vacancy for JP District Number 11. And tonight, thank you for deciding to do this with your time. We appreciate you very much. And I would like to have the prayer and the pledge is going to be handled by Mr. J.P. Bill Usry. Bill.
Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and just to be of service to the county. We ask that you give us wisdom, give us discernment, Lord. And we thank you for that in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Daniel Balls. Here. Harvey Bowman. Here. Rick Cochran. Here. Robert Dennis. Here. Lisa Hickey. Here. Ann Harbison. Here. Sharon Lloyd. Here. Tom Lundstrom. Here. Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Here. Gary McHenry. Here. Joe Patterson. Here. Butch Pond. Here. Bill Usry. Here.
Quorum present. Thank you. You have the agenda in front of you, and do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda's adopted. Approval of your minutes. The minutes of the June 16th regular meeting as well as the July 9th special meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections to be made?
Madam Judge, I have two.
You're recognized.
On to the June 18 minutes on page 262, line 7. So 262.7, I think it should be no citizen comments instead of 2. And then there was a correction noted the last time on page 281. It's section 281.1. It's my comments, and they said change was not necessary. I'm sure I said 3 readings because through readings doesn't make sense. So whatever people heard on the recording was just simply not accurate. So I would ask that those 2 corrections be made to the June 18th minutes. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a
Judge,
second.
Before you do that, is it to move with Justice Madison's corrections?
Yes.
I want to make sure that we get that straight at the beginning this time.
So this, to adopt the minutes with the corrections, I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. I have been working on an appointment to the ordinance, the appointments to the Ordinance Review Committee created last month. I will let these appointments be known sometime next week. The bridge projects are coming along very well. The Harveydale Bridge remediation started about a month ago, and as of the past Tuesday, the Stonewall Bridge is back to where it was in March before the piers were torn out. Both of these bridges will be visited during the Public Works Road Tour on September the 28th. Excuse me. Cost figures, as requested by J.P. Patterson, will be sent out next week and can be discussed during the tour. I have been working on the tour for the County Road Department, and we are pleased to have this opportunity to take any of the JPs that would like to go, because I think there is a learning experience in this. So if anyone wants to go, they're welcome. And then I'm going to ask Mr. Zega to provide a brief update on the letter everyone received from Mr. Braswell. Steve?
Thank you, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen, after some back and forth with Mr. Braswell's attorney, in which I thought we had this issue resolved, and y'all got an email from me, everybody but Dr. McHenry, I think, or Justice McHenry, got an email from me asking to let the events unfold. I believe that after Labor Day, when Mr. Braswell's attorney came back, we had this issue worked out, and it turned out we did not have it worked out. We have asked Mr. Braswell's attorney to avail him to talk to us about the letter. The last place we left that, so you all know, was with George and myself being the only two people in the room besides Mr. Braswell and his attorney. We asked to record it so there would be no misunderstandings about who said what to whom. And Mr. Braswell's attorney first agreed and then changed his mind about that. Or did not, he agreed to Mr. Butler and myself, but then changed his mind and said he was not going to avail Mr. Braswell at all. So, as of this afternoon, we filed a motion in federal court in the ongoing lawsuit to essentially compel Mr. Braswell's attendance at an interview. So that's where that is. Please understand that the reason we are taking this step is, and we, in fact, the interview, we asked to have it in front of the federal judge. Here's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that we don't want anybody feeling like they're being pushed around, coerced, intimidated, or anything else. But when you begin an investigation, when you investigate allegations that somebody made, the logical first step is to talk to that somebody. And so far, we have not been able to do that. So we are still attempting to do that. And Judge, I would, with the chair's permission, I would entertain questions or comments if there are any. And Mr. Butler has been privy to those emails and those email strings as well. If he's got anything to add, I'd suggest that you allow him to speak to the court as well.
Yes, you're recognized.
Why isn't Lindsay Huffaker as HR involved in these? Because that seems to be a very appropriate way to handle. Because I've had numerous conversations with Lindsay, very productive conversations about matters that have been brought to my attention about the road department. And so I have a hard time understanding why she's not involved in these, and we've elevated it to a level where our attorneys are interviewing him.
Okay, the two answers to that, Justice Madison, are first, he didn't make any allegations about HR policies or issues about promotion, harassment. He made straight allegations that were violating the law, which is why I'm involved in this. And why Mr. Butler's involved in it as the ultimate, besides the judge, the person in charge of the road department. To the, what was the second part of your question after the part about Lindsay?
That was sort of it, because I mean, typically in a situation like this, when even allegations of illegal activity occur, HR investigates. HR is the investigative wing. Because one of the concerns I have with it is that you are an attorney of record in the case, in defending the county and the judge and everybody. And that's what I think is a little odd about it. I know I've been scolded for my remarks, so I'm trying to restrain myself. But, it seems like we're making this, elevating this to a level where we have not elevated other things like this in the past.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Braswell wrote the letter and addressed it to the county judge.
And to us.
Yes. So he elevated it.
Well, because he, in my
May I finish?
I don't think we need to argue. Let's wait and take.
I'm sorry, Judge, I'll defer. The elevation occurred, in my judgment, when Mr. Braswell brought it to the county judge and the quorum court, which he's perfectly within his constitutional and statutory rights to do. No problem with that. But when you elevate it to the judge and then say, but I'm not going to talk to my boss or any representative of my boss, that's problematic for me. These are not HR allegations. The allegations are the road department is not properly equipping, flagging, and signing for people working in rights-of-way. The allegations, the second allegation is that we're not calling one call, and the third allegation is that we were not getting highway permits. With due respect to Lindsay, none of those things are in her sphere. They're not HR issues. They are straight issues of the law. If he had said, hey, there's sexual harassment going on.
Which would be illegal. Sorry.
But that's an HR issue. Not having cones out on the side of the road is not an HR issue.
Well, I disagree, and I'll just say that previously Mr. Braswell had sent this court and the judge a letter, and nothing happened. So the difference in the way we're responding to them concerns me, and I share some of, I guess, Mr. Braswell's concerns about why this meeting isn't happening. So that's all I'll say. You don't need to respond any further. I mean, you may need to, but it's odd that we seem to be saying that because he won't talk to us, we can't do anything about this problem. And it seems like we should absolutely be doing something about the problem, whether or not we hear from him at all. So, thank you, Madam Judge. I'll conclude my remarks.
Yes, would you please come to the podium?
Not having the specifics of Mr. Braswell, but all they would do is make some.
You can turn on the mic, George.
That. I already had a bad habit of that. I went out and talked to his supervisors. I'm assuming he'd made allegations to them, and they related to me a couple of instances where he was claiming that one call protocol was not being followed when in fact it was, and also when emergency vest and flagging rules were not being followed when in fact they were being followed. And in fact there was one instance where he got caught not wearing his emergency vest. And so I can only guess that he's talking about these same instances, but I don't know without talking to him. And maybe he is, and he's got a different take on them, or maybe there's some other instances. But I'm not aware of, and his supervisors were unaware of any others. Excuse me, just a minute. Phone's going. And that's why we need to talk to him. I think his lawyer suggested we submit written questions to him. We could go back and forth in emails with questions for a week when we could have a sit down for in less than an hour. We could find out what we needed from him so that we could investigate it further. And also, I mean, one reason why we wanted our lawyer involved is because the man is suing us. He's suing the judge, he's suing Donnie Coleman and Sean Shrum. I'm the only person that's not being sued yet. And so I felt we needed our attorney there, and obviously we needed to contact his attorney to be sure it was going to be okay to question him. If we'd asked Lindsay under, that was another person. We were already being criticized for intimidating because there were going to be 4 of us in the room besides Steve. Well, Lindsay would have been a 5th person. We took up him on his offer. I told Steve, I said, let's take him up on his offer. That'll just be you and I. That's what he proposed to us. And then he changed his mind. Said he would not talk to us under any circumstances. So we've investigated all we can without talking to him further. The only other thing I know we could do would be to interview every single person in the road department, which could take a substantial amount of time to interview each one of them to see what they know or what they've heard, and plus totally disrupt the road department when we could easily get the information that I'm assuming Mr. Braswell has. He's known for taking notes the whole time he's out on the workplace, so I'm assuming he's got it documented. So that's what we've done so far.
Yes, J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I'm a little worried that what I'm understanding is that we've not done anything about these.
No, it's not a
Because
question
we've
of not
not
doing anything. We have one-call protocols in place. We also have always had protocols about wearing emergency vests, when flagging is required, when
I'm
when
aware of
certain
that. There's a
signage is
manual.
required.
But
Yes.
have you checked with other people at the road department
I
to see if
checked
they're
with
routinely
his
followed?
supervisors to see if he made any allegations. He said, yes, he made these allegations on this date, but they ended up being unfounded. He was incorrect in his perception of the situation, either that one-call protocol had not been filed or that proper safety procedures were not being followed.
You followed up, and all of his allegations have proven to be
the ones, and he said in his
lacking.
letter he had made this, made his supervisors aware of this. So I talked to his supervisors. So I did talk to them, and they said, yes, he raised this and this and this on such and such a date.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me put it differently. Are we confident in our hearts that our employees at the road department are exercising every due diligence available to be sure our employees are safe and that we're following safety equipment, one call, the whole bit?
Yes.
Are we confident that we
Yes.
don't have a problem?
Absolutely. In fact, Donnie Coleman had was out the road department the other day and told me he had someone had said in the road department there were some guys out working on a road without their safety vest on, without the flagging equipment. It had all been given to them, so he went out there and checked on them, and sure enough, they weren't, and they got written up.
Okay, you just told me you were sure that we were following protocol,
so all
but
we
we're
do
not.
is we're not out there with drones flying around where we can see what everybody's doing all the time all over the county. You know, we assume they're doing it, they're instructed, they're given the equipment. If a supervisor goes out there, sometimes they're out there, they're not. Sometimes they might catch somebody not, following the rules. We had an instance where guys were out there and the word got back pretty quick. They were not wearing their safety vest, did not have their signage out. And Donnie went out there himself right then and there and found that was the case, and they got written up for it.
Do we not have some kind of, I hate to call it punishment, but some kind of action that occurs when people take it upon themselves to not?
They got written up for that.
They got written up?
They got written up.
Okay.
Right.
And there's just that one isolated instance?
That's the only one that I know, that I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, I just want to feel good about our employees not in harm's way, and whether it's digging up a live wire or failing to wear the orange vest.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Just a quick question. Since it looks like he's not going to willingly meet and we're having to take this to a higher legal level, would there be any wisdom in starting that week-long process to get the email answers to the questions so that we can avoid a longer
that's
delay?
possible, Joe, but it's reached the point of absurdity, in my opinion, that he can make a public allegations like that and then not have to, answer some simple questions from his superiors. Basically, when did this occur? Who was involved? Was it you? Who told you to do it? Or was somebody else who told you about it? That could certainly be done. But these are not issues in the lawsuit, but obviously, we had to be cognizant of the fact that he is suing us.
I think, and that's probably the reason for my question, is in light of the fact that he has shown an ability to sue us, just making sure that whatever we can do on the front end, if we're not able to compel him to come immediately and answer those questions, if there was any way to expedite that process that maybe...
Well, we could compel him to do it. He could just refuse to come, and then he'd have to take the consequences. He could be disciplined for that, but we're not going down that road because we're being sued. Any other employee that refused to do that would have been fired on the spot.
And like I said, in light of that, since the circumstances are somewhat different, that's why I was thinking there might be to protect the county from any liability in case he does have validity to anything that he's brought up, whether it be the permits or whatever. If there was a way to get those answers to those questions via email, which his attorney obviously could view and approve of before he sent to us, if that would expedite the process, would that help us limit our liability?
Well, I don't see that we have any liability. When we talk about liability, you mean liability to Mr. Braswell or to general liability for breaking some law or rule?
Well, we're just in a very unique situation where some of his allegations have proved troublesome for us in the past. And so trying to make sure that if there's any validity to his allegations, that we've either assessed them and addressed them or assessed them and found them not worthy of being addressed. So that my concern is kind of above this is just protecting the county. Right now, we're at risk for some lawsuits that are in process. My first goal is to make sure we avoid any unnecessary ones. So either lawsuits from him, anybody else, or lawsuits from whatever laws that we've allegedly broken in these 3 new items that he's brought forward. So that's the liability, I guess, that I'm referring to, just the county as a whole being liable from any of those venues.
Well, certainly we could do that. It's rather cumbersome to do it that way, but could certainly be done. And it seems absurd that it has to go that way. But
Attorney Zager would like to make a comment, please.
We're Justice Maxwell, since we're talking about liability, and even though George sat in this very chair for many years, I think I'd like to address that, if I may.
Sure.
Judge, may I
Yes,
engage
please
Justice
do.
Maxwell in a colloquy? 3 allegations. The first one about what we know about the first 2, about one call and about the safety issues, turned out to not have merit as far as we can determine. Okay? The third one he raised about permits had merit. All right? And we acted to correct that situation when we investigated it. Okay? Here's my these current allegations, there'd been no adverse employment action taken against Mr. Braswell because he's raised these allegations. All right. So from a liability perspective from George Braswell, I need to be very careful about how I say this. I can't stop his lawyer from amending his complaint. What I can tell you is that we haven't done anything to him to justify that. All in the world that we're trying to do is figure out the specifics of what's in this letter. That's it. I think this is not so much a legal issue as a policy issue, but do we really want to set ourselves up as a county for an employer for making it so that you have to ask an intermediary every time you want to talk to one of your own employees? And I don't think that we do. None of these current allegations that Mr. Braswell has raised are in his federal lawsuit. We asked his lawyer to come out of a courtesy, first of all, to him, and two, frankly, to make sure so he knew we were not quizzing him about issues that are in the lawsuit. I am confident as we sit here that we are not exposing ourselves to further liability right now by insisting that George Braswell talk to us directly about George Braswell's allegations.
Thank you, Madam Judge.
J.P. Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Judge. If I can make a statement as well as a question.
Sure.
My statement would be, I want to be sure that we show respect to every Washington County, call them associates, employee, that we show respect for every associate that ever brings anything forward. I've been on the other side where I was a whistleblower, but I did it so brazenly, I just said it outright and ended up losing my job over it. And so I want to be sure that we show respect to anybody that brings a complaint forward, regardless of whether we think they're right or whether they're wrong. Because if we don't, those who know of things that are wrong will not come forward with them. And so we've got to be careful and set a good example when we talk about our associates, because if not, they may know something that would just save us a tremendous amount of money, and they won't bring it forward to us if we're not fair, if we don't treat all of our, with respect and dignity and everything like that. And then my question is, because he communicated the letter to all of us, I made a phone call to him, and then he tried to call me back, and we never connected. And I called him back and said, "Hey, I didn't get you. You didn't. Do you want to call me back?" He never called me back. But should we? I want to be. I guess I've already done it. I've already told you about it. But at the same time, on Freedom of Information Act, are we responsible to report that to you that we made that? I made that contact. But since he wrote the letter to me, I thought, well, I'm going to call you back this time. I called him the first time too. We just never did talk other than the first time. So anyway, do we have obligations to you to be sure and we let you know all this? That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to let the attorney answer that.
There are, I think, three sort of points or questions within what you just said, Justice Dennis, so let me take them, I think, sort of in reverse order. With respect to FOIA issues particularly, the phone call it's not a record unless you recorded it. Okay, so it wouldn't really fall under a Freedom of Information Act. That's not the right. Second, you don't have to report to the judge or anybody else your contacts with constituents, people who bring you issues. You're not obligated to do that. Now, I would hope in a situation where there's something elevated as it has been in this circumstance to the 15 of you sitting around this horseshoe and to the judge, you'd let us know about that just out of courtesy, but there's no legal obligation for you to do that. Third, any one of you have and your constituents both within and without your districts can call you and discuss, and as long as you feel like talking and as long as they feel like talking, you have every right to do that you want to. So I don't have any heartburn with you talking to Mr. Braswell, and it's not a foiable issue, I guess. Is that a word I just used? It's not a Freedom of Information Act
Sounded good.
issue. I would just like it because of and it has really, in that case, has nothing to do with the lawsuit, but simply because he's elevated it to all of you. I think that letting the judges know that you had the judge's office know that you had the conversation and the substance of the conversation. I know you didn't have one, but if that were to happen, that would be helpful to us.
Any other comments? Thank you very much. The next thing, we're going to move on to our committee reports. First Committee of County Services, J.P. Madison.
Well, I didn't get a report, but it was a very brief meeting, so I've got it covered. We met on August 31st, immediately after the special quorum court meeting, and Sophia Stevenson gave a very brief report from the Environmental Affairs Office on the activities their office is doing for the quarter. And then I gave a brief report on planning, which was rather uneventful, and I think that basically comprises what is on our quorum court agenda for tonight is the uncontested issues that came out of the last planning board meeting. And that concludes my report, Judge.
Thank you very much. Next thing I have is Public Works. J.P. Bowman.
Yes, ma'am. Guys, we met this August 31st, and Ron Wood brought us a report about what's going on with the roof on the old courthouse, and he says it's going to cost us about $14,520 to get that repair done. They did check for black mold and so forth and found there was no problems there, so everything's moving on. In addition, he said that the new cameras that had to be replaced out here for security put a lot of pressure on him, but he says his budget's beginning to dwindle, but as far as something doesn't break or come undone, that they ought to be okay. We had discussion about the road tour. The judge just shared with us about the plans for that, and 7 people signed up for that. I guess a prominent thing about this discussion, I thought we were going to have a 10-minute meeting, and it wound up being considerably longer about a lot of discussion that didn't get recorded. But it was very interesting and informative, and I think we ought to have more of those. And then J.P. Patterson asked about the figures on the road department on Harvey-Dale and Stonewall, and the judge just told us that we'll be receiving that information next week.
When we take
Okay.
the tour of the county.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So that concludes the comments about that meeting. Thank you.
Personnel, Butch Pond. Jail and Law, J.P. Lundstrom.
Judge, we did not meet due to lack of agenda.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. The next thing we have on the agenda is number 8. That's Mr. J.P. Pond's ordinance.
Yes, ma'am. Steve, would you read 8.1, please?
An emergency ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit granted by the Planning and Zoning Board. Whereas the Planning and Zoning Board granted a conditional use permit on August 27th for White River Cafe, and whereas immediate ratification is necessary by the quorum court to prevent undue delay and expense to the applicant, and whereas ratification will not affect any appeal rights any person may have, now therefore be it ordained by the quorum court of Washington County, Arkansas, Article 1, that the conditional use permit for White River Cafe granted by the Planning and Zoning Board is hereby ratified. Article 2, Emergency Clause. It is hereby determined that it is in the public's best interest for this ordinance to be effective immediately, and the general health, safety, and welfare of the citizens are affected by such for the reasons as set out above. Therefore, an emergency is declared to exist, and this ordinance shall be and is effective from the date of its passage.
This is a very low impact business. Actually, they're setting up it's a carryout cafe, and it's in an existing building. It's been there several years. Nobody that drives through there is going to really notice any change at all. Ingress and egress by the public will not be on and off of Haberden Road, actually. It'll be on Guy Terry Road. I'm very happy to see this come in, even though it's only carry out. We're in short supply of any kind of cafe in our area, and this is welcome. I just can't see any reason why. I'm glad the guy came forward. He could have started making sandwiches of there, and we'd have never known the difference. With the approval of the health department, certain changes he's going to make. I like your music. Sorry. They'll get their approval when they meet all the health department standards. So I move to pass 8.1.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Judge.
Yes, J.P. Harbison.
I was at the planning board meeting when this was discussed, and it's a very low impact and no complaints. So, it's one of those things that can benefit the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I did.
He did read
You
it.
read it.
Wake up.
Didn't I read it?
Shame on you.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that knows those kind of deals.
Any other discussion? Karen woke up, so now we can get on with it. Do I have any public comment? With no further comment, Carly, would you call the roll?
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls, Harvey Bowman, Rick Cochran, Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Lisa Eki, Ann Harbison, Sharon Lloyd, Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison, Sue Madison, Joe Maxwell, Gary McHenry, Joe Patterson, Butch Pond,
This ordinance is adopted. Number 9, Joe Patterson, this is yours.
This has to do with basically the same thing. This emergency ordinance ratifying conditional use permit granted by the Planning and Zoning Board. Steve, would you read the ordinance?
An emergency ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit granted by the Planning and Zoning Board. Whereas the Planning and Zoning Board granted a conditional use permit on August 27th for Reed Commercial Building, and whereas immediate ratification is necessary by the Quorum Court to prevent undue delay and expense to the applicant, and whereas ratification will not affect any appeal rights any person may have, now therefore be it ordained by the Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas, Article 1, that the conditional use permit for Reed Building Commercial Building granted by the Planning and Zoning Board is hereby ratified. Article 2, Emergency Clause. It is hereby determined that it is the public's best interest for this ordinance to be effective immediately, and that the general health, safety, and welfare of the citizens are affected by such for the reasons as set out above. Therefore, an emergency is declared to exist, and this ordinance shall be and is effective from the date of its passage.
Thank you. This is just a commercial building being built on Highway 412 east of Sonora, and we just they have it on emergency. There's nothing unusual about it. The lot size is plenty good, and sewer's been inspected, and so it's all good to go as far as I know. Looks like it, and I would just ask I would make a motion we approve this.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Discussion and public comment. Any discussion from the court? Do I have any public comment? With no further comment, Carly, would you call the roll?
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman, Rick Cochran, Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Lisa Eki, Ann Harbison, Sharon Lloyd, Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison, Sue Madison, Joe Maxwell, Gary McHenry,
Yes.
Joe Patterson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
This ordinance is approved. Next thing we have is other business, and I would like to remind everyone of our next special quorum court meeting. This is scheduled this coming Tuesday, September the 22nd at 5:30. I have a feeling we're going to have a bunch of these, so just hang on. We're just getting started, so I just wanted to remind everyone. Are there any announcements that needs to be made at this time? Do I have any citizens' comments? Please identify yourself.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Lorraine O'Neill. I'm at 3001 West West Weddington, Apartment 82, Maple Manor Apartments. I have a question about the tour that is planned. I didn't quite catch the date. And are citizens allowed to accompany the Quorum Court on the tour of that you mentioned earlier?
This will only be for the JPs
Okay.
because of the liability. We can't afford to
I
do so. And so this will be
I
next
see.
next
Okay.
week. But
No
thank
problem.
you.
Okay, that was it.
How is it not considered a meeting? I mean, she may not be able to ride in a county vehicle, but isn't it considered a meeting when we're all assembled?
It is a meeting. She can go, but she couldn't. I mean, she couldn't ride on the bus
Okay.
because of the liability.
That was what I meant.
Oh, okay. No, you can drive your car and you can go if you want to.
I didn't catch the date and time.
I'm sorry.
She doesn't know the date.
Okay, the
28th of September.
and it will leave it like at 1 o'clock.
And
then
you
it-
meet here in the parking
No,
lot?
ma'am. We will be down at the road department.
Oh. Okay, I don't know where that's at.
You know Highway 71 going out of Fayetteville,
Okay.
and you see the Mexican Original
Okay.
plant, and then the Budweiser plant. You just go down the road. That's Clydesdale, and we're right down that road
Okay, and that's on the 28th at what time?
at 1 o'clock in the
Oh, okay.
afternoon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other citizens' comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
I'm blaming this long meeting on you.